Good morning, and welcome to an overly simplified explanation of tech support. I'm going to let you in on some of the inner workings of tech support so you can finally understand why it takes so long to get a hold of someone, why it may seem like they're unwilling to help sometimes, how to spot a representative who legitimately cares, and why cutting the representative on the other side of the conversation some slack might just make everyone's day a little better. First, let me explain something. I currently work full time in tech support as my day job. I have been with my current company since the end of 2017 and started my support career almost a decade ago fixing computers at a local office supply store. Before that, I went to school for network administration and software engineering before life decided it had other plans for me. I've also been tinkering with electronics since a very young age. I dismantled a VCR with my grandfather when I was around 7, just so he could watch me put it back together again. I can remember upgrading the family's first computer from MS-DOS to Windows 3. Yeah, I'm that old. And continuing to play Doom on it after my father was done with work. When my older brother went off to college and asked for an expensive computer, I told my parents just to buy a nice case and used old PC parts to Frankenstein him a computer that lasted 3 years of his schooling before he became an Apple lover. I tell you this so you can understand the knowledge I share with you today, I share from experience. Depending on where you live and who you've had to call for support, you may have even talked to me before as I helped troubleshoot some problems you were experiencing over the phone. But enough about that. Let's get on to what you really care about: the knowledge. Structure. And this may sound like an of course statement, but you'd be surprised at how little you think about this in the heat of the moment. There are fewer support agents than customers. Shocking, right? No, not at all. The fact that customers outnumber staff is a given. Here's the clincher, though. For a company to remain profitable, it must keep the least number of employees necessary to effectively support the customers they deal with, which means less staff than customers who are having issues. Let's put it this way. Imaginary Inc. is a software company with 10 people in its support team. They have 10,000 customers and an average of 100 calls a day. That means that each person can take 10 calls a day. Easy, right? Now, Imaginary Inc. could hire 100 people to answer support calls so that everyone only has to take one call a day. But then they would be paying a full salary for each person to take one call a day and then spend hours watching YouTube. But don't get me wrong, I would love that job. I would kill for that job. But that's not a sustainable business model, and that company would be bleeding money. Instead, the company wants just enough representatives that they are all constantly busy without being overworked. Beyond the number of staff, there's also different departments and levels within support. The easiest way to describe this is using our beloved friends, cable providers. As an example, cable providers usually offer TV, internet, and phone, and supporting some of those are easier than others. And supporting multiple categories simultaneously just adds to the amount of understanding the representative needs to have. The more the rep needs to support individually, the more training that rep needs. The more it costs the company to train that employee, and the longer it takes before they can start actively supporting. TV might be the easiest, so they might be considered Tier 1 or basic support. Tier 1 usually indicates the lowest level of support, requiring the least amount of training, or the newest members to a support staff, depending on that company's structure. Internet is usually more complicated and might be considered Tier 2. Tier 2 implies an escalation from Tier 1, a higher level of training, or possibly even a more senior staff member. The phone is usually easy but requires certain legal permissions and is left to the few who have been trained on everything. These representatives who are designated as Tier 3 are usually the most trained and are usually escalated to and not reached directly. They may also be the most senior members of a staff under management. Why am I waiting? We already discussed that there's less staff than customers contacting the company, so why else would you have to wait a while to talk to a dang representative about your faulty toaster? Well, here are a couple of things that could be causing a slow response time, some of which are good, some of which not so much. Timing, business hours. If a company has set business hours and isn't open 24/7, or has differently staffed shifts, then some times are worse to contact for an issue than others. Late shifts, or after hours, may have a skeleton crew, as these times rarely see much support use. But if any sizable issue arises, and the staff can easily become overwhelmed. Even during fully staffed shifts, there's usually an ebb and flow with peak times when people tend to reach out. Local lunch shifts are usually a bad time to try and reach support, as literally everyone waited until their break to try and make a quick call to support. If you contact while the business is closed, then it stands to reason that you will not receive a contact back until the support staff is back in the office on the next business day. Major issues. If the company's product is experiencing a widespread issue, enough people may be reaching out to easily overwhelm the support staff, regardless of their personnel numbers. If your power goes out in your neighborhood, you call your electric company and sit on hold for an hour, you can bet that every single neighbor that you have is calling in and sitting on hold as well. Company hardships. No one wants to hear this one, as it sounds like I'm making an excuse for corporations and the man. But sometimes things happen behind the scenes, and sometimes support just takes a back seat to figuring out those issues. Here's an example. If company B gets purchased by company A, hiring is usually put on hold for a decent amount of time while finances are finalized. This is usually a legal thing and can't be bypassed, even if people quit during the transition. That means for 6 months to a year or more, the support staff can't gain any more employees, might actually lose employees, all while the company is still bringing in more customers. That can make for a very difficult time, both for customers and for the support staff. If you ever hear a representative tell you that the company just went through a merger or a buyout, cut them some slack. They need it big time. Poor staffing. Some companies just staff their support teams poorly. This could be poor training of their representatives or simply not enough support staff to cover the customers. Just remember, any surveys that you get are almost always regarding the representative themselves that you worked with and not the company. So blasting the company by getting all zeros in the review only hurts the representative you talk to. Leave an honest comment about the company in the review or send emails to the company. But just leave an honest review of the support representative in your scoring. Their job and or pay may depend on it. The company cares. Wait, what? Long hold times because the company cares? What backward logic is this? Hear me out. If a company sees you as a person, they will encourage their support representatives to stay with you until your issue is solved, whether you're dealing with them for 5 minutes or 2 hours. If they don't care, then they'll penalize their support reps for spending more than 10 minutes or so dealing with your issue before moving on to the next number, customer. I bring up cable companies as one of my support jobs was a tier 3 technician for one. And that job's a perfect example of this. Everyone hates their cable company, and there are reasons why that is understandable. But the one I worked for actually had the highest rating for customer support, if you exclude their outsourced tier 2, in the nation. We cared. I had many a customer reach me yelling that they were on hold for 90 minutes before I would explain that it's because we don't move on to the next customer until we resolve your issue. Now, we were encouraged to finish the call in less than an hour, but if we went over, it wasn't the end of the world, and we usually had a good reason to do so. Then we were bought by a new company. They changed our internal rules and started giving demerits for calls that went over 10 minutes. And enough of those in a month could get you fired. Yes, the customers didn't wait on hold nearly as long, but their issues were rarely solved anymore without the customer getting transferred multiple times to avoid that 10-minute mark, or just having a technician sent out 1 to 2 weeks later. Which would you rather have? A long hold for someone who cares, or no hold time for someone who sees you as a problem to be gotten rid of? Missing steps. If you are contacting through an online form or email, sometimes a step may have been missed. Always make sure to provide a valid email address and check your messages, especially spam and junk, to make sure some form of verification message hasn't been sent back, or that the support staff hasn't attempted to contact you through that method. Also, please read any form that you're asked to fill out. Improperly filled out forms waste so much of everyone's time. Difference in experiences. The customer and support rep will see things very differently. A good example of this is the saying, coincidences happen all the time. As a customer reaching out to support, whatever issue you're facing is most likely uncommon, if not rare to you. As the support rep listening to your issue, it's not. Remember, the rep is only fielding calls or emails from customers experiencing problems. Almost no one contacts support to say, hey, everything's working fine and you're doing a great job. If the explanation for the issue you're having sounds like a 1 in 100 coincidence, so it couldn't be that, try to remember you might be the 200th person to bring this issue to that rep this week. Coincidences happen frequently, and your issue just might be caused by one. Many customers also seem to contact support frustrated that things don't just work. They equate their purchased software having bugs to their refrigerator malfunctioning. That kind of logic is just blatantly wrong. First, most of the things that people claim just work are old technology, having had decades to perfect how they work, while the products they're being compared to are current and living technologies, constantly evolving alongside all the other things they interact with. They also usually work in isolation instead of connecting to a bunch of other constantly updating products. Your fridge's performance isn't tied to your stoves, and both aren't tied to your kitchen's performance, which updates 3 to 4 times a year. That's why your fridge is stable, while the program you purchased that is currently having an issue on Windows is not. Windows updated, which caused the software to not work as expected, which might or might not be a big enough problem to be widespread. Simple things just work, but you're not contacting support for a simple thing. To rant on a tangent, one of my pet peeves as a support representative, and I'm sure this bothers many of my fellow colleagues, are customers who call in and try to prove that they're smarter than me. First off, this isn't a competition. Second off, when it comes to the product I'm supporting, no, you're not. I'm the expert, hence why I work as a support for the product, and you don't. Hence why you called me. If you understood the product as well as I did, then you would have fixed it yourself. Unless you were a former employee, please don't argue about why you don't think the issue is related to what the representative is talking about. You can easily provide evidence that may counter their proposed solution, but saying anything along the lines of, you are wrong, to the rep just makes you as the customer seem ignorant and obstinate. I'll be honest, the nicer you are to support, the more slack they give you. But the nastier you are, the closer to the company guidelines those employees will stick. Common customer frustrations. So here are a few words or ideas that may frustrate customers contacting support, with a brief explanation as to why they exist or what they mean. Demarcation. This fancy word simply means the stuff for which the company is responsible versus the stuff that it isn't. If you have an issue logging into your Gmail and call Google support, they will help you with your login as Gmail is a Google product and under their demarcation. But if you then ask for help with your router settings, as it seems to be blocking your emails from getting in or out, your router isn't their product. You didn't buy a Google router, unless you did, but you get my point. So why would you expect them to help you with those settings? Because they're techie and smart, so they should understand it and just help? No. If they help, Google could be considered legally liable for any issues that arose from their employee changing settings. And if after they adjusted your router settings, you went and clicked that link in the email from a Nigerian prince and got a bunch of viruses, you might say that you only got the viruses after the router was messed with by that Google employee. And then you could try and sue them. So yeah, they're not going to help you do something that isn't their product. They aren't passing the buck. They're only supporting their own products and nothing beyond. Escalation. Sometimes a call needs to be escalated to someone with more knowledge about your particular issue. Sometimes a customer demands escalation. No matter the reason, escalations usually add a lot more time to the resolution of any issue. Remember how I said there are fewer staff members than customers with issues? Well, there are far fewer managers or supervisors than staff members in support, and escalations are not their only job. Same thing with developers. Getting to the customer that has been escalated is important, but they may be stuck on another project that cannot be stopped, or there might be higher priority issues that mean that you're going to have to wait. Now, an escalation should be legitimate, just as an employee shouldn't escalate for no reason. A customer should not demand escalation for no reason either. The representative usually wants to see your issue resolved just as much as you do, and working with them can usually get it resolved much faster than demanding a manager. Self-help. Some customers refuse to use the self-help options, instead demanding that a support representative provide instruction personally, or at the very least be present for every part of troubleshooting. This is mind-boggling. Most self-help options are created for the simplest and easiest to perform fixes, and, if made right, should be really easy to follow. Using the self-help options can potentially save you hours of waiting for a representative, as you're doing what they would tell you to do anyway before even getting in contact with them. Contacting support and saying you did the self-help and it didn't work when you didn't won't fly either. They will check. They will know. Don't lie to the support rep, because you're just making solving your issue that much harder. Online-only support. In today's day and age, most support is moving to an online-only format, foregoing the phone-based support that was the norm for the past 30 plus years. Most older generations don't like this change, and even some of the younger clientele would prefer to be able to call support instead of having to email or chat or fill in a form. The reason for the change is that a support rep can easily juggle multiple issues at the same time via email or chat, while phone conversations limit them to only one issue at a time. Collaborations between representatives and departments becomes much easier with online support versus phone-based as well. The internet has taken over the world. It may be time to accept it and hop on the bandwagon. Summary. All right, so let's consolidate all of this important information into as short of a summary as I possibly can do. Number 1, waiting is normal, but the reason for waiting can mean a lot for how the company functions. Number 2, think about the big picture outside of just you having an issue with the product before calling. Is this problem widespread? Is it affecting just this product, etc.? Number 3, how you act contacting support is just as important as how the representative acts. Number 4, support probably has a reason for telling you or doing whatever it is. Number 5, take advantage of any resource that is provided to you. Hopefully, I've given you a little insight into the world of a support representative. If you have any questions, suggestions for other topics I should cover next, or want to share some stories of tech support calls that you've been a part of, leave a comment below. Subscribe if you want to be notified of my next video. Otherwise, have yourself a wonderful day.